Since there are so many different ways to do things in After Effects, we sometimes forget the easiest tools of all. In this video, I'll show you how to build custom animated number sequences very quickly using presets. So let's start by checking out those presets. Now, if we look at our project, you can see it's labeled counting numbers. And if I grab my current time indicator here, we can scrub through the timeline. And here you can see I've got some different pieces of the animation. And if you notice, this large pie piece scales up and then the number 44 just sort of pops on. As this large pie piece is scaling up, I want the numbers to scroll up from 0 to 44%. Now to do that, we could do this a number of ways. But let's start by just scrolling down in our timeline until we can see our text layer that says 44%. I want you to be aware of the fact that there are some presets already built into After Effects. So if we scroll down here under Effects and Presets, there is a section to actually generate numbers. If we go down here under Text and open that up, there's an option for numbers and for timecode. So let me go ahead and just create a new layer solid. I'll make my comp panel active and just say layer new solid. And we'll make sure it's the comp size and then click OK. And let's drag the numbers right onto the gray solid. It's going to ask me what typeface I'd like to use. I'll click on the pull down and I'll just choose something simple like Arial. You can choose whatever you like. I want the alignment to be center, and I want the style to actually not be regular but be bold. And I'll click OK. And now it's actually generating some numbers. If we scrub through, it's kind of hard to see anything because the numbers are sort of tiny. If I want to make the numbers larger, I need to go over here in the effect controls and crank up the size of the numbers. So notice I have options here. I can click and drag on the value offset setting here, and as I drag, I could change different settings. Let's say I don't want there to be any decimal places. I could change that to 0. And so now, if I just want this to count from 0 up to 60, I could do that. Let me change the value to 0. And it starts at 0. And let's position our text layer. I'll just click on this crosshair here when it says position, and I'll drag it right there over top of the piece, or just click to reposition it. Let's make the fill color white. I can grab the eyedropper and just add that there. And then here I'll scroll down in my layers and just disable my 44 layer. So let's scrub through the timeline and see, okay, I want the number to start counting here at about frame 213. So I'll add a keyframe for the value right there like so. Now let's move down the timeline here a little bit. And then when this piece comes up at 226, I'll set the number to 44. Then we can go ahead and click anywhere else to set that number. Now, if I go ahead and move my current time indicator, notice it's already starting to count all the way up to 44. So if I want to add that percent back in, I can do that as well. If I go down here where it said 44%, let's turn that back on and just double click on the T to make it editable. And I'll just click and drag from the left side of this percentage and just press delete. So now when I grab my selection tool, I can reposition the percentage over here. Now I want you to notice this percentage isn't bright white. If I select layer 11 and press T for the opacity, you can see it's at 100% opacity. But this number 44 is bright white. So I'm going to select layer 1 here, and I'll change the fill color by grabbing my eyedropper and sampling my percentage. That way, it's probably going to be a little closer to legal. So I like how this is counting, but I'd actually like the numbers to scale up. So let's move our current time indicator until the pie piece is at its fullest. And then we can just make this medium gray layer the child of our object that's scaling, which is this large piece here. So select layer 13. And I'll press S for scale, and you can see, okay, it is scaling. And it's looking at layer 12, but that's okay. That's just controlling a spin option here. So what I want to do is make my 44 the child of this large layer. So I'll scroll back up, select layer 1, and under the parent I can click on the pick whip and point it down to our large layer. And when I let go and click in this area to deselect, that'll set that. So now as the piece is actually coming up, it's scaling and counting. And then once it resolves, doink, 44 actually comes up here, like so. So in terms of actually creating numbers that count, it's relatively easy. All you have to remember is that there's a numbers preset. Once you actually set those numbers, it's just as simple as traditional keyframe animation.